Hey guys, it's Mr. Possible. I am doing it uncomfortable. It's late at night and I'm doing my video. I wanted to talk to you about, well, I'll tell you a story. I used to know this guy, and I thought he was a good friend of mine. His name was Harry, and he would come by. I worked for an internet company, and he'd come by every single day, and he'd bring me a Yoo-hoo. And I remember he would always say, you the man, Ted. And I really took a lot of pride in that because I took a lot of pride in my work, and I lived for those days. And when he didn't show up, I felt kind of down because I didn't hear him saying you the man. And for years, that was pretty much the way I operated in my career. I was a systems analyst or an operational engineer. I worked with computers, hardware, software, you name it. And I lived for that, you're the man, or I would sleep on data center floors, or I would stay up for hours and hours on end. And it was really just to hear that praise, just to hear people say, you're awesome. And I mean, as the quote goes, people will work for money, but they will die for recognition. And I definitely personified that. But I'm here to tell you that that's a mistake. And because not any one person can give you all the praise that you need. And what I have learned in my life is that praise from someone is detrimental because they may be in a bad mood, or they may just decide they don't like you anymore and they won't praise you. And it's also detrimental when you get praise for unfounded things just because, someone wants to blow smoke. So, I mean, that definitely happened in multiple relationships of mine, where I started to base my self-worth on what other people said. So about the time of my divorce, I started to relook at that as well. And so, how do I get, where do I get my validation from? And to answer that question, I get that validation from myself. I started a program shortly after my divorce where I used a neat little trick, which I'll talk about in a bit, but to change my tape in my head and to, I have talked before about a physical pat on the back. I was constantly doing that. My daughter talks about that. But basically to change the way I thought and to essentially not care what other people said about my performance. And that trick that I talked about is called a thought loop. And basically what you do is you thought loop good thoughts about yourself. Now, these are called affirmations commonly, but it's not enough to do 3 affirmations in the morning and 3 affirmations at night. I actually replaced counting. Like anytime I counted. So if I was, counting, waiting for something like 60 seconds in my head, I would do, I love myself 1, I love myself 2, I love myself 3. Or if I was waiting for a bus or whatever I was doing, I was constantly doing thought loops. And it worked. I mean, it took a while for my process to change and for me to recognize it. Then I also would reward myself specifically for whatever it is I thought I was doing good. And I would ignore what other people said I was doing good. And that also took a long time because I was so addicted to the praise. But ultimately, I learned that, hey, man, when I do something great, it's awesome. It's knocked out. I knock it out of the park. I don't care if somebody else says you knocked it out of the park. The only reason I would care for that is to see kind of like where they're at and gauge, where the public opinion is or what someone else's opinion is. I definitely wouldn't do it for my own self-worth. So there's times that people are like, oh man, you're the man, you're awesome. And I'm thank you. And then I just go on. I think it's really important to get all of your praise, all of your approval, all of your recognition, your adulation, all of that from yourself first, certainly before complete strangers or people that you work with. I think that builds a good, healthy self-esteem. And if you want to use my trick, which I would physically pat myself on the back. So I would make a decision and a good decision, and I would pat myself on the back. And I use positive affirmations throughout the day. Like I said, I use thought loops. I also spoke it into existence. What I mean by that is I would actually say things out loud to other people that were not yet in fruition that I was working on, and that, how I felt about it. And I just kept speaking it, I'm really good at this, or I'm getting better at this, or, I did a really good job there, just kind of speaking it into existence. So, although this is scatterbrain, the point that I was thinking about today is that praise from other people. I heard that Phil Hellmuth once met. I read this in his book. I'm reading Positivity, or I was reading Positivity. I actually finished it. He says in his book that he met Elon Musk, and he asked him, "What do you think about praise?" And Elon basically says, "I ignore praise." And I agree with him. I think you should ignore praise. I think that the only praise that you should receive is the praise from yourself about a job well done. And some people might say, well, that's very selfish, and how do you know, don't you care about what other people think? And no, I don't care what other people think. What I do care about is how I affect other people. In other words, if I do a job, well done, and I think it's a job well done to my standards, then that will affect people in a positive way. It doesn't actually matter what they think of my job, unless, of course, I'm working for them and they have specific, things that they need. But if I'm doing a job for them or for people around me, if I focus on myself, I will do better for the people around me, especially since my level of standards is higher than most people. So if I'm happy with my own level of standards, then of course it's going to work out for people around me. And that brings me to a second point. And I heard this very early on, right after the divorce, and it was this saying, and it's also repeated in Do It Scared and a whole bunch of other books, but the saying that, I remember when I was flying back and forth from Hawaii to California to see my dad for the summer, then to go live with my dad, the announcer, the stewardess would come over and she'd say, in case of a water landing, and she would add to that, or loss of oxygen in the cabin, then the mask would fall down, and place the mask over yourself before your children. And that always struck me because it's the exact opposite of what the world thinks you should do. The world thinks you should serve other people. So when I got a divorce, I just basically took this concept and ran with it. Taking care of myself, filling my own cup. And it is true what they say. When you fill your own cup, your cup runneth over, and it can't help but affect everyone around you. If you're so busy, focusing on other people, and you're not, caring for yourself and improving yourself, then in a lot of ways you're faking it with the other people, because you have to love yourself before you can love other people. I found this out the hard way. You think you're loving other people, but you're really just trying to fix them to make them better without first fixing and improving yourself. And when you fix and improve yourself, you realize you can't fix and make other people better, that you have to wait for them to choose their own free will to do it, or just decide that they're not going to do it. I think that takes maturity, and that comes after I did improvement of myself. So yeah, take care of myself first and then take care of others was also a central pillar after my divorce. So that goes right along with the praise thing, right? I have to praise myself before I praise others. I have to first, figure out what I'm going to do that fits my standards before I start to care about other people's standards. And what that teaches you to do is to love yourself and to take care of yourself. And that's okay. And I know that the world tells you opposite. It tells you, no, you should take care of your stranger first. You should absolutely come to their aid before you do anything for yourself. That's not the way I operate. And I have found ever since that I switched from really operating that way to operating that I take care of myself first. I make sure I'm healthy first. I, make sure I eat well. I make sure that I get lots of sleep. I make sure that I exercise. Then I can take care of people. Then I can, do things to help people. Then, my cup runs over. All of the, the goodness in me flows out. And that's okay. I want you guys to know out there, that's okay. That's okay to be that way. And it actually is very fantastic. So just to recap, the only praise that you need to take from anyone is yourself. If you're taking praise from someone else, if someone else saying attaboy or good job or whatever lights up your day, that is going to cause you issues in the future because there's no way to sustain it. There's no way to control the source of that praise. The only person you can control is yourself. The only person that, you really have an in with is yourself. So don't leave that control to other people. I chose not to, and I'm very happy about that. And I hope this helps. It's just some thoughts I had, and I'll post another video tomorrow. So again, this is Mr. Possible. I'm here to prove that anything is possible, including I'm going to be a professional poker player in 4.5 years. Thank you guys. Like, subscribe, and share this video, and have a good night.